My name is Geno Samuel, and welcome back to Discographies. Yes, where I'll be over-analyzing the studio albums of prog rock band, yes, one by one. So, after the Union tour, the band's manager Phil Carson wanted the 1983-88 lineup of the band to record a new album for his new independent record label, Victory Records. And after some discussions about including other Union members like Rick Wakeman, this is a better angle actually, they eventually indeed returned to the 80s 5-member lineup by 1992 or 93, and off they went to make a new album. In stark contrast to the previous two Rabin-led albums, Trevor Rabin wanted John Anderson to be involved from the very beginning of the songwriting process. So basically most of the album was conceived and written by Anderson and Rabin in California. Chris Squire said that he wanted a stronger collaboration to spawn between those two, so he made the decision to limit his own involvement in the songwriting process. And when it came to recording the album, it was mostly recorded at Rabin's home studio, the Jacaranda Room in Hollywood, and significantly, it was recorded and put together digitally, without using any tape. And this was a really big deal at the time, because it was newfangled technology and wasn't as capable enough yet to truly be a replacement for standard analog recording. They used the digital audio workstation Digital Performer, which had a limitation of a maximum of 4 audio tracks that could be stacked simultaneously, meaning that you had just about enough space to record drums, bass, guitar, and vocals and place them on separate tracks. Fast forward to the present day, and it's not unusual for me to have up to 20 active tracks on a given song of mine. So how the hell did they manage to get anything done back in the early 90s? Well, after some crazy experimentation, they got 4 Apple computers, all running the audio workstation simultaneously, and connected them to an IBM machine, and somehow created a 16-track setup this way. They were legit working together with software developers and analyzing errors that they encountered and altering the program to make it work. And it was nuts that it got the job done at all. But yeah, recording it digitally allowed for easier manipulation of the tracks and reduced the need for recording retakes. The raw, unedited audio took up about 34 gigabytes of memory. It was a huge burden to make, but how does the album sound? Well, let's get right into it, shall we? The opening track is The Calling. It starts really bright sounding, with acoustic and electric guitar playing a riff that would become the basis of most of the song. Rabin recorded either on a native electroacoustic guitar or used an attachable pickup setup on his acoustic guitar, because he notably did not record with a mic, and that direct recording sound from the pickups is quite different from an organically mellower one achieved by recording the guitar sound with a microphone. The vocals start off pretty quickly, giving us the hook of the song. Absolutely huge harmonies. Feeling the calling of a miracle in the presence of the one. The drum sound is quite interesting. The kick drum especially is absolutely booming, in contrast to the typical kick drum sound that's pretty much just the initial strike, like a and the sound dies near immediately. This one has a reverb effect on it, I think. Or perhaps it's actually a kick drum that naturally sounds like that, like so it reminds me of like a rock taiko drum, if that's even a thing. The way the bassy boom is sustained for a little bit. The lyrics have lots of place names in it, but that's okay. John Anderson makes it work somehow. The drums and bass sound particularly rich and chunky, and Chris Squire uses his Cream Rickenbacker for a lot of this album, you know, the classic bass that he always used in the 70s, and it's quite delightful to hear. There's not much keyboard work going on here. It's mostly guitar-driven, actually, presenting a fresh new sound that doesn't bring back memories of 90125, nor does it allude to the prog rock 70s, yes. This is something else, something special and original. There's quite a lot of overlapping guitars on here, both acoustic and electric, clean, overdriven, jazzy, you name it. There are some light touches from a Hammond organ also, played by Tony Kaye, which is pretty much the only thing that he did on this album, was play some parts on the organ. The rest of the keyboards are actually all Rabin, though Trev was quite supportive of Kaye in a later interview, stating that Tony was more of a co-producer for the album and provided a lot of encouragement for Rabin's production. The choruses are so massive vocally The rest of the instruments kind of take it easy, with the bass especially playing a simple part consisting of mostly long sustained notes. And that's okay because the arrangement gets filled up with lots of glassy, delicate acoustic guitar strumming and tamburining and stuff. I can't stress enough just how many overlaid Rabins, Andersons, and Squires sing in the choruses. They sound so amazing. After a couple of couplets, they get into this instrumental break where the beat kind of falls apart in an interesting way, and it got me thinking, wait, is this still in 4/4? It is actually, but the band plays these odd rhythms and make me confused. It's all quite good though. Rabin performs a beautifully clean solo here. It's very raw sounding, very delicate, and quite rapid in its delivery. Wonderful. They do a similar thing like they had done in a few songs before, wherein they change up the beat for like 3 bars or so. This time to a very bluesy 6/8 for 3 bars, then back into the regular scheduled programming we go. They really take that basic riff idea as far as possible, exhibiting a significant dynamic range over the course of this near 7-minute long song that is basically just verse, chorus. But it's so good, really. Apparently there is a so-called full version or extended version that is, I think, just over 8 minutes. I haven't heard it yet, so can't compare, but I'd imagine that it just has a longer instrumental break. But yeah, the song finishes very quietly and optimistically. The structure itself is kind of simple, but the arrangement itself is chock full of so many things, and the musicianship is solid and rather outstanding. Really great. A new yes, indeed. Next up is I Am Waiting, which begins with a similarly sunny and pleasant guitar motif. This first bit is the verse section, but without any vocals yet. Rabin plays a beautiful melody on electric guitar, very soft and gentle. Keys play simple chords on a pad, very simple pattern, and none of those YK chords from Union. They're just simple straight major chords playing a 1-4-5-1 pattern. Drums are barely their hits on kick and right cymbal, and squire is barely audible on bass. Then suddenly they kick it into high gear for the next instrumental section, which is the chorus, but again without vocals yet. Drums and bass sound just as big as in the previous track. Guitar is still playing the melody here, but now with a lot more overdrive. It remains quite romantic though, lovely tune. Then after the vocalist chorus, we get back into the very gentle verse, and now with Anderson on vocals, singing about 4 syllables at a time, as to not interrupt the guitar playing that gentle melody. So in a sense, the singing is almost the accompaniment in the song, because Rabin continues to play the melody on guitar in the verse and chorus. They introduce a lovely pre-chorus that has a fresh arrangement that's different from the rest of the song, and also features that good old interplay of reverb on vocals suddenly cutting out, creating a very intimate sounding delivery at the end. The choruses are similarly carried out with John singing 4 syllables occasionally, keeping the guitar as the driving force behind the song. This bit sounds so rich, filled with depth, from the combination of the booming kick drum and perhaps a bass pedal as well, and distortion in the bass guitar itself. After the first real chorus, Rabin's voice comes out of hiding and he carries this little post-chorus bit that's all of a sudden very heavy and intimidating. It lasts only 8 bars, and then the song returns to the soft verses. This bit kind of reminds me of a similar scene in Level Find a Way of their big Generator album, like a linking section after the first chorus that doesn't return again. Maybe it's the Rabin touch. The verse features this lovely call and response type vocal delivery, with Rabin answering back John with distant reverb-drenched lines like, "I wanna be inside your heart, I wanna love forever." Then they deliver a new sort of chorus in a higher key that has some of that wonderful huge yes choir sound, playing off the guitar melody this time. Then back into the original key and do a chorus one more time, ending with a soft instrumental delivery of the verse section. Again, like the previous track, this has a really simple structure at its core, but goes on for a long time, over 7 minutes, but it feels like it's as long as it should be. It feels very natural. Another superb entry from Trevor Rabin featuring Yes. The third song is Real Love. largely written by Squire. It begins very darkly, with mysterious ethereal chords on keys, and it's almost spooky actually. Then the bass comes in, playing a pulsating rhythm on a single note that is the basis for the majority of the bass line on this track. It slowly builds up in intensity with acoustic guitar and synth strings playing the main hook of the song that for the moment sounds like heavy metal on a really good bright sunshiny day. The drums at this point are a synth beat, still pretty light for the most part. They sound great and have this almost industrial quality to them. The vocal line is really high up in Anderson's range, and he carries it with such power and ease. It's played in unison with guitar that stays in the back for the most part. Then a snippet of the vocal line gets sampled and incorporated into the synth percussion ensemble, this really artificial distorted so damn cool. Meanwhile, the arrangement itself is still pretty much the same, just gradually getting louder and heavier and scarier. It's just one set of verse lyrics, so that repeats, but it's cool. It matches the repetitive nature of the instrumentals in a way. Then after the second verse, the real drums come in and kick up the heaviness lots of notches. The bass too gets filthy here, and Trev comes in with a melody playing on top of that metal riff with a slide on his guitar. Nice touch, taking full advantage of pretty much every possible sound and technique of his guitars. The pre-chorus offers a new landscape, led by Rabin on vocals, and the chorus again features an arrangement that is somewhat of a trademark for this album, of Chris playing single sustained notes on bass during the chorus that usually last a whole single measure. The bass sounds really big regardless, and perhaps this is a way to draw more focus to the melody line, be it guitar or vocals or both, and the bass kind of becomes part of the synth bed holding the chords in the back. I'm not too big of a fan of the second half of the phrase in the melody of the chorus. It's like, oh, miss me love! And then the next bit I think sounds disjointedly too rapid or too long and complex when compared with the first half. It's like, but that's just me, so feel free to disagree. The post-chorus instrumental break reminds me of classic Yes. Even though this is quite modern sounding, it's a great little motif that repeats a few times in the song. Then back into the verse we go. It largely is the same as before, but just a little bigger. The instrumental bit coming right after is probably the heaviest the SS ever sounded, like proper metal. I mean, this is coming from someone who doesn't listen to metal, but this sounds like metal, raw, powerful, and in your face. The pre-chorus licking section is likewise just as heavy, full of heavy chugging from guitar and bass. The chorus follows much like the one that came before, but after it we get a nice little distant soft synth pad-led rendition of the riff, very dreamy and atmospheric. Then we eventually build up again to the really heavy riff and one final chorus. And a filthy guitar solo too. That goes all over the place with the slide. There's some interesting panning for extra effect, and I kind of feel sorry for the whammy bar that gets thoroughly abused in this bit. Another great track. Clocking in at 8 minutes, it too features a really basic design, but somehow makes it work to great effect. Very strong track, 3 for 3. Again, there's barely any keyboards on this one, and if they're there, they're pretty far back in the mix. Next is State of Play, which is a bit shorter than the previous 3 songs. It begins with a screaming guitar bit that was inspired by the sound of an ambulance siren speeding by. The drums then come in and exhibit a speediness not truly heard yet on this album. This is a more fast-paced song, and the beat is heavily inspired by hip-hop, well, at least the hip-hop of the early 90s. So this is like a hip-hop and rock mix, and the guitar parts on this track are quite heavy, almost as heavy as Real Love. And combine that with the hip-hop beat, and you get a really intriguing sound. The verse is led by acoustic guitar strumming and 3-part harmony in the vocals. Really nice and bright, and far removed from the foreboding quality of the previous track. It's a really beautiful mix. Then they go into this, it's just a stand-up play, which is basically a sign for the intro instrumental motif to return. There is a tricky key change into the chorus that sounds very sunny, still full of delicate guitar work. Now, percussion in the shape of a tambourine and some other stuff, I'm sure, keep the rhythm going and make the song still feel fast, because the rest of the instrumentals and the singing, line 2, slow down a lot, in the typical talk fashion now, of sustained bar-long strikes on keys and guitars and bass. Really great melody and delivery from Anderson. He sounds very strong in this song especially, singing solo in the chorus as opposed to the harmony-heavy verses. After the first chorus, the band go into an extended instrumental break, featuring a wacky guitar solo and some interesting effects going all over the place, complete with a brief key change too before settling back into a very Peter Gabriel-esque groove for the next verse, now complete with a very 90s synth kick drum punching through the mix. The next chorus is quite similar to the one before, which then leads into a very lovely section that is just the chorus but with a new instrumental melody in place of the vocals. I can't tell if that's a guitar or keyboard actually. It's in a pretty low range, and it reminds me of the guitar solo of Is That the Way Life's Meant to Be by ELO. The backing vocals come in briefly to sing I Wanna Be Inside Your Heart, which is of course a reference to the song I'm Waiting on this album. And that's really cool, this whole self-referential thing that has been done before in Topographic Oceans, linking back to the melodies from previous albums. But this links back to a previous track on this album, and is a big trade of concept albums, of course, as a way to tie in all the separate tracks. But this isn't a concept album, and this is just a playful little thing that they decided to do, I guess. After some more brief revisits of previous themes, both soft and hard, the song ends with an energetic conclusion. It's got an interesting structure, basically verse-chorus, bridge, verse-chorus. It's relatively short for yes, but it packs a punch. At this point, I'm kind of waiting to encounter a song on this album that's less than great, because the band haven't been this consistently excellent in a very long time. Next is the 5-minute-long song, Walls, written by Rabin and Supertramp frontman Roger Hodgson. They go back to a slower groove, like most of the songs that came before it for this one. It's got the same kind of instrumentation too at the beginning. I love the inclusion of acoustic guitar in these tracks. It adds so much happy brightness to the music. After the interesting instrumental introduction, the music figuratively takes a breath, and we go into the verse. The mood is really fresh and kind of unexpected, almost displaying a soft country sensibility. Trev sings lead with John, supporting him with harmony almost all the way through. The drum sound is more subdued here, and it's better suited for the music that they're trying out on this one. The arrangement itself is very simplistic and quite Agnes-like, but dear god, it's so cool. No weird unexpected chords in the verses and choruses at least, and you can kind of treat this one as like this album's equivalent of Love Will Find a Way. The link before the chorus begins to build things up so that the chorus sounds significantly bigger arrangement-wise than the verse. The melody line is very catchy and makes you want to sing along. I wanna love, I wanna give, I want to find another way to live. The next verse and chorus follow much the same pattern. It's very commercial sounding, and shame that it wasn't as big a hit as I would have liked it to have been. The intro theme instrumental bit returns for the bridge section, and after a brief rest stop here, we go back into the final set of the choruses. Vocals sound really big, bigger here than in the ones before, and naturally reaching a climax. Rabin sticks in a lovely sunny guitar solo, very clean and full of Rabin flourishes. Then the band let the backing of the chorus play on for a bit, riding that infectious groove, letting it take over, as Rabin and Anderson playfully exchange, "Oh!" Then the song starts fading out, and it gets you thinking that this is the end of it. But at the very tail end of the fade out, the chorus cycle ends to reintroduce the groove of the verses, and I'm like, what, really? That's really unusual. And it makes you feel that there was a lot more to the song than what made it onto the album. As the song almost disappears into the fade out, Anderson comes up and sings, "Let me run to the river." Just had to stick that river in there, didn't you? Anyway, really great song. And honestly, this album is so great, it's relentlessly great. Well, the next song is the one that I've been kind of waiting for, and that's Where Will You Be? The first not great song on the album. I definitely was a lot harsher on this song in the past because of the Irish qualities in the music, but I should just work past it and be more accepting. Even so, I don't think it's great. It's okay though. It's pretty much just all Rabin, with some eventual drum work from Alan White to add more life to the predominantly keyboard-led track. John sings the thoroughly Irish-sounding melody in unison with a guitar line for pretty much the entire track. Where will you be when you're not here? How many lives in this earth time? You are my soul, and yes you are. Two souls intertwined, that's what we are. We ba 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 and da 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 da. The arrangement largely consists of looping patterns on various keyboard sounds. I can't really explain technically what makes it sound Irish. I think I need help on this one, but it just has something to do with the flow of the melody and the notes chosen. Maybe it uses a particular scale that's prevalent in Irish music? I don't know. It doesn't go through many changes thematically, except for a sudden minor, dark-sounding linking part somewhere in the middle that then leads back into the previously established pseudo-Irish lull. I gotta say that Rabin, as expected, presents some really great acoustic guitar work in the form of solos towards the end of the song. Really delicate and rapid, exhibiting the typical Rabin stylistic traits. The repeating synth lines kind of have a hypnotic effect on you. It goes on for a good long while without many changes to the music. It ends rather suddenly with an ominous mid-90s sounding chord on a synth pad, like, oh okay, that's how you're gonna end it? By reminding me of Union? Overall, I'd say that this is the weakest track on the album. It's not bad, but it just doesn't have much substance and honestly could have been cut by like 2 or 3 minutes, which would have made it more enjoyable. So with that out of the way, we get to the epic finale of the album, a 3-track long prog rock epic called Endless Dream. Part A, Silent Spring, is a 2-minute long instrumental that's very fast paced. It starts with a loop of a piano rhythm in 5/4 time, I believe. It actually sounds a lot more complex than it actually is because of the counting of the rhythm patterns. The rest of the band gets introduced, playing these heavy riffs coming from all drums, bass, and guitar. Everyone is heavy, so this is a return to the previously established heaviness of the album. This is a really great little number. It reminds me a little bit of Cinema actually, but darker in tone. Lots of layers of guitars and keyboards keep piling on, while Alan White continues to play the Talk trademark booming drum kit sound. They go through some really complex rhythms that are genuinely quite tricky, so at the end of the track, everyone stops and the reverb bleeds into the following track. Endless Dream B, Talk, the main part of the song, coming in at nearly 12 minutes. It begins with a soft and slow piano motif, in stark contrast to the madness of what came before it. Trevor Rabin shows up to sing lead vocals here. All that I you go all the way. Tainted as a fugitive with nothing left to say. Temptations may come, the longest trip you'll take is inside. They put on this really interesting effect on the reverb and delay combination of his vocals, and not the lead vocal track itself. I mean, of course, there's a little bit of processing in there as well, but the reverb itself has this weird combination of several things like, I think, phaser and flanger and stuff like that. Really interesting sound, and it truly fills up the sonic void because apart from some very light and brief appearances from guitar and other keyboard sounds, this is just Rabin on piano and vocals at the beginning. It's a nice melody. This album is full of wonderful tunes and so many opportunities to sing along and get infected by their grooves. This first bit also exhibits some more of that Irish quality in the music. It reminds me of Where Will You Be, of course. The build-up is very gradual and it's all very pleasant throughout. Then the music becomes significantly more hopeful and John shows up to take over from Trev. Alan too comes in on ride cymbal, adding a more concrete rhythm to latch onto in this very sparsely accompanied movement. The new melody is lovely, really, but what else is to be expected at this point? It's the last time, give it in, this time, you're forever mine, I sing this to you, all the world and all it is. Sing this to you, this gift of love. Then quite abruptly, the song gives you some serious whiplash by launching into a hard-hitting heavy instrumental section led by an electric guitar melody. This truly is a return of long-form compositions with lots of different repeating motifs heard throughout. Like a return to the good old days. but nevertheless still distinctly different stylistically and confident in itself. After that brief guitar bit, the song drops down in intensity again. The song transitions into this awesomely funky instrumental bit where it's all just guitars really, chugging away while being worked on by some very zany effects like phaser and auto-wah and stuff like that. The panning goes wild and the music runs circles around you, almost like this is an entire world of its own. Then the rest of the band, one by one, join in. The humongous halftime beat coming from drums, wow, and the heavily distorted bass make this a very intense halftime headbanging musical moment. Then they do a good old revisiting of the previous themes in the classic Yes style, finally returning to the hopeful sing sort of Irish kind of chorus. Talk, talk, listening, have to reach out to. It's really great, very strong melodically and chordally. Then the music falls back again for a wonderful little synth pad led ethereal bit that is so 90s, my god. It's still pretty cool, but again, like about the Irish thing, I can't really explain why this sounds as 90s as it does, but it do. Maybe it has something to do with the combination of the specific set of chords and the bright quality of the keyboard sounds. It sticks around for a good long while, but before it starts getting all dark and you faintly hear a return of the fast piano loop from the intro of Silent Spring. Guitar and bass come in for some foreboding dissonant themes that then lead into a brief revisit of Silent Spring, followed by some more reruns of previous themes, and then finally landing into the ending loop of choruses, singing talk, talk, listening. It sounds very beautiful. They introduced this gorgeous new section that's kind of based on the chorus motif, but different melodically, but it's equally as powerful. So take your time, look around and see. Again, sounding vaguely Irish. The key keeps changing and going up and up. John likewise reaches a ridiculously high note towards the end, perhaps even too high, to the point that his voice loses a lot of the body and sounds more like screeching rather than singing. But getting past that, this whole pleasant groove keeps going, taking with it until it suddenly concludes with a defiant bang, and the instrumentals hold the final chord, letting it decay into Endless Dream C, Endless Dream. It takes on a similar feel to Where Will You Be in its gentle synth-led arrangement and electronic percussion. It also sounds a bit like Celine Dion is about to show up and go on and on about her heart. The vocals make one more triumphant return, singing a wonderful rendition of the previous So Take Your Time melody, featuring some really huge harmonies, but delivered rather softly and low in the mix, creating a dreamy quality to the music. After the vocals conclude, keys make a reference to the melody of Where Will You Be, again linking back to other songs on the album. And then not long after, you get a synth whooshing effect going and it's all over. Wow. I have no issue declaring this as one of Yes's best ever albums. Even most people who disliked 90125 for its drastic change in style ending up liking this one. Rabin truly redeemed himself in the eyes of many staunch Yes fans. To me, he was always great, and it was excellent to hear how stylistically diverse his contributions with Yes were. So I'm gonna rate Talk a 9.2 out of 10. Simply amazing. Probably my second favorite Yes album after Close to the Edge. It was finally released in March 1994 to really mixed reviews, and it performed pretty bad commercially, much due to the ever-changing musical landscape of the day, at the time being oversaturated with grunge music, and a lack of promotion for the album given that Carson's record label went bankrupt. Carson himself said that it was an amazing album, but it was made at the wrong time. It seems like it got more recognition and praise in later years. It must have been kind of demoralizing for the band to go on tour supporting this album and playing venues with lots of empty seats. By the way, Billy Sherwood joined the lineup for the live shows as an additional musician, playing keys, guitar, and bass when necessary. After the tour, Rabin felt that he had given all he had for the band and decided to leave the lineup and pursue film composing full-time, contributing the scores for such classics like Con Air, Armageddon, Bad Boys 2, and Snakes on a Plane. Tony Kaye also felt that it was about time to go. So the band was just pieces of its former self yet again, but somehow they carried on and, of course, made lots of new music. So join me next Monday when I'll be talking about the band's next creative venture. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe for more music reviews and original music. And special thanks to my patrons. And if you're interested in contributing and supporting, please check out the links in the description below for more. Hey and hello, my name is Geno Samuel and welcome back to Discographies, yes, where I'll be overanalyzing the studio albums of prog rock band, yes, one by one. That was a good one. Hello. Yeah, shit. Let's do that again, shall we? Hey and hello.